Good day, everyone. By the way, I am Emily Tidiparini, your reporter for today. And today, I will discuss about the language is sounds phonology. So, what is phonology? So, phonology is essentially the description of the system and the patterns of speech sounds in a language. So, there are other approaches of phonology. There are generally three ways to approach phonology. First is articulatory phonetics, which we have just seen been discussing in the study of production of speech sounds by the vocal organs, but it is not the only way to examine the role of the material of language. So, it is also possible to examine speech sounds for the physical properties, that is from the perspective of acoustic phonetics. Next is acoustic phonetics. So this approach requires the sounds of a spectrograph, a device that visually represent acoustic features of speech sounds in the form of spectrograms or voice bands. And lastly, we have auditory phonetics. It is a study of how speech sound are perceived and interpreted by the various organs of the human body like ear, auditory nerves, and brain. We will focus on articulatory phonetics here. So, learning the other two areas to physicists, neurologists, speech therapists, and other specialists. So, next is we have the anatomy of sociology of speech. So, the capacity of speaking and speech itself are taken so much for granted that few individuals ever stop to sounds are produced and why they vary as much they do. So, although it is true that speaker use tongue automatically without concentrating, it is equally true that the production of the dozen to a score of speech sounds per second requires extremely well coordinated and precise movements and positionings of various parts of the speech apparatus located between the diaphragm and the lips. So, the anatomy and physiology of speech is including esophagus, larynx, nasal cavity, oral cavity, pharynx, trachea, upper lip, upper teeth, alveolar ridge, and hard palate, and velum, ovula, molars, lower lip, lower teeth, tongue blade, tongue root, epiglottis, vocal cords, and direction of outgoing air. So next is vowel. What is vowel? Protagonists like to talk about two main classes of speech sounds, so vowels and consonant. In the production of vowels, the air that escapes through the mouth or for oral vowels as well as vowels of the nose for nasalized vowels, so is relatively unified. So vowels are classified according to the part the tongue that is raised, the configuration of the lips, and the extent to which the tongue approach the palate above it. Vowel sound are produced with a relatively free flow of air. They are typically voiced. So, to describe vowel sounds, we consider that way in which the tongue influences the shape through which the airflow must pass. To talk about the place of articulation, we think that is a space inside the mouth as having a front versus a back and a high versus low area. So Next is there are types of vowels according to the manner place of articulation. So first is manner of articulation. If the air escapes through the mouth with no obstructions, as in the case of consonants. So the sounds is if the air escapes also through the nose, it is a nasal or nasalized vowel or normal or oral vowel. So if the lips are relatively flat, the vowel is unrounded. Next is the points of articulation. So this refers the position of tongue in the mouth in two dimension. In two dimensions. So front, middle, or back of the mouth, and the height uh, from top to bottom, high, middle, lower middle, or low. This is the part of articulation. So next is we have consonant. What is consonant? Consonants. The sound consonants are mostly articulated via closure or obstruction to the vocal tract. Consonants are described by the place of articulation and manner articulation. So, in the production of consonants, the sound is altered or modified greatly as it passes through the mouth and throat. Compared to consonants, vowels are almost physically unmodified breaths of air. So typically, consonants are described by the place unmodified. Consonants are described by the place of articulation and manner of articulation. So the places of articulation range the way from the glottis to the lips. The last place of the vocal tract where the outgoing air can be modified. So next is the place of articulation. So the place of articulation, we have palato-alveolar sounds, sometimes called post-alveolar, are made by touching the blade of the tongue to the location just behind the alveolar ridge. That is a palato-alveolar. Next is retroflex. Retroflex sounds are made by curling the tongue tip backward and touching the area just behind the alveolar ridge. Next is palatal. Palatal sounds made are by touching by the tongue blade, and the forward part of the tongue body is too hard. Palate is sometimes described as palatal approximant. Next is velar. Sounds are made by touching to the body of the tongue to hard or soft palate. Velar. Next is ovular. Sounds are made by moving by the tongue body straight back to touch the ovula and neighboring portions of the soft palate. Next, we have pharyngeal. Sounds are made by moving the tongue body down and back into pharynx. Next, we have the glottal. Glottal sounds are made by moving the vocal cords close to one another. Next is we have the manner of articulation. So, manner of articulation, affricates are formed by joining a stop and fricative symbols together as in for instance, the first and last of church. The same ligature may be used for so-called or complex segments such as the labial velar, which are formed two places of articulation simultaneously. So, This is the examples. We have the stops, fricatives, affricates, nasal, liquids, and glides. So next is uh, so go back. So stops is sounds that are produced by some of stopping or the air letting in it go abruptly, and affricatives is combining a brief stopping of the airstream with an obstructive release which causes some friction. Next is nasals. When the volume is lowered, the air stream is allowed to flow out through the nose. Liquid liquids as the I sound called lateral liquid and is formed by letting the stream flow around the sides of the tank as the tip of the tank makes contact in the middle of alveolar ridge. So next is the glides. These sounds are typically produced with the tongue in motion or gliding to to or from the position of a vowel and are sometimes called semi-vowels. The sounds are described as glides. Next is we have the consonant chart. So consonant chart, this is the International Phonetic Chart of or IPA chart conversing consonant. It can be seen that any consonant is in the chart is describable with the terminology given in the next table. So or next slides that that a fair number of symbols is listed to do not occur in English. Next is we have the International Phonetic Alphabet. So we have this. We have pulmonic consonants. This is the example of this is the main portion of IPA consonant chart. Next is we have the IPA non-pulmonic consonants. Next is we have vowels, suprasegmentals, tones and words accents, and the IPA chart or other consonants. Next is the diacritics or some diacritics may be placed above a symbol with a descender or example like that. So English has 24 consonant sounds. Some consonants have voice and from the voice backs and some don't. So these consonants are voice and voiceless pairs. So this is the examples. As you can see in step 2. So in step 3, I recognize that the IPA symbols might be confusing to many individuals, but keep in mind that you don't have to memorize every IPA symbols for it to be useful for enhancing your English pronunciation. So, voice and unvoiced. When you speaking, you use your local chords to make a voice consonant sound. An unvoiced consonant sound doesn't need your vocal chords. So, lightly place a finger on your throat when you make a consonant sound. So, if you feel vibration, the consonant is a voice sound. So, unvoiced consonant sound will not make your throat vibrate. So, fish, vow, and song have been beginning unvoiced consonant sound. So, next we have the diphthongs. Diphthongs is a change in vowel quality within the same syllable. So, diphthongs are handled more elegantly in American system than in the IPA. So, as noted, a diphthong is a change in a vowel quality within the same syllable. Basically, in American system, if a syllable process I proceed higher and toward in front of the mouth, this is indicated by adding the symbols or Y to vowel. So, for example, for instance, if a high font vowel I as depicted as E, as if a syllable proceeds higher and toward the back of the mouth, this is indicated by adding the symbol of ew and the vowel to the vowel. So for instance, if a central back vowel O as in home moves higher as in boy, and this is depicted as oi. So I think this is my last slides, and thank you for listening. God bless.